Hey, journal keepers. So, a major obstacle that many of you have been writing to me about, and we together have kind of discovered, is our tendency as humans to almost lie to ourselves or deceive ourselves without wanting to deceive ourselves. And sometimes this is for our best, and sometimes without knowing so, we may be damaging our own growth and maybe even the people around us. So, to address this pain, while I was reading the book called Everybody Lies by Dr. Seth Stevenson Davidovitz, I wanted to kind of bring him on so we can talk to him about some specific examples. So first of all of us can be better aware of what these things are, and how can we instead of just indirectly or implicitly deceiving and lying to ourselves, use it to our advantage, using our journals, so we can become almost more, first of all, more aware human beings, and second of all, hopefully better make decisions about these things that we do on a day-to-day basis. Without further ado, let me introduce Dr. Seth Stevenson Davidovitz, who is a former Google data scientist and a PhD from Harvard. So he's also a contributing op-ed writer for the New York Times, and he's the author of the book that I have read and highly encourage everyone to give a read, Big Data, New Data, and what the internet can teach us about who we really are. And together we're going to be going through some really tactical, I guess, three-step process. First, I'm going to throw it to Seth to kind of help us understand what this harsh reality, or I guess our way of deceiving or lying to ourselves is. Then we're going to jump into some practical things we can do to first be better educated and aware about it. And then we're going to quickly wrap it up to how we can practically, hopefully using our journals or whichever way we articulate ourselves, become better human beings. So without further ado, Seth, why don't you give us a quick pitch of how we deceive ourselves, or essentially the main thesis of your book?
Okay, so the book Everybody Lies is that, well, we deceive other people and ourselves. So I think you're probably more interested in deceiving ourselves. And the way we tend to deceive ourselves is we tend to be too optimistic about what we're going to do in the future. We think we're going to exercise more than we do. We think we're going to watch more intellectual stuff. We think we're going to read the book. Everyone can order Everybody Lies, and then all of a sudden they might never read it. But I think what we lie about how we're going to do. We lie about what we've done in the past to make ourselves look better sometimes. We exaggerate. We sometimes falsely tell ourselves the reasons we do things. We're very bad at analyzing the reasons we do things. So, if you ask people that why did you vote for a particular candidate, they'll give a big explanation. Well, maybe they just vote for the Republican candidate every time, and they'll say it's because of this policy or that policy, but it may just be that if the person has an R, if you look at their voting history, they just have an R next to their name. It's always the R, but they rationalize all the complex reasons that they like this candidate. So there are many ways that we're kind of strangers to ourselves and unaware of the real reasons we do things.
Yeah, I particularly found your example about our behavior on social media, which many of us do, but I guess many of us don't have a critical look at it. Can you dive? Yeah.
I don't know if that's lying to ourselves or lying to other people, but we tend to present a false image on social media. So if you compare the two magazines, the National Enquirer, which is a trashy gossip magazine, and the Atlantic Monthly, which is an intellectual magazine, the National Enquirer sells more copies every year, but the Atlantic Monthly is 45 times more popular on social media because everybody wants their friends to think they're really intellectual, or maybe people just want themselves, when they read the National Enquirer, they block it out of their mind, but when they read the Atlantic, they're always reminding themselves, oh, I read this article. So definitely that is another example.
Yeah, no, I particularly found that example very interesting, and particularly because many of the audiences we have, they usually write in saying that they feel everyone of their friends, and they usually judge them using social media, that they have perfect lives, they're super intellectual, or in other words, no one else is watching porn and I'm the only one who's addicted to porn. That's a common thing I try to tell people, that you're not the only one out there. Your friends are not going to tell you, or they're not going to publicly accept that they have this.
Well, that's a big part of the book is this idea that you don't compare. I use a lot of data, Google searches from porn. I study a lot of porn data. Study Google search data, and it's very different. So I think people have a very false impression of what other people's lives are. So I think we tend to go through life maybe needlessly judgmental of ourselves because we compare ourselves to an idealized portrait of other people. Frequently, we can be too hard on ourselves in many cases because we a lot of times our judgments of ourselves, where we stand relative to other people, is just totally off. We're horrible at knowing where we stand on where other people. A lot of people think they don't work hard enough. Well, if you think that everybody else is working 80 hours a week or like doesn't goof off or doesn't procrastinate, then of course you're going to think you're not working hard enough.
Yeah.
It's an actual idea of the data on how much people actually work, which is a lot less than you'd ever imagine, then you might not think that you have a huge problem anymore. I do think that the book is trying to open everybody up a little bit. Like, look, what you see in the world is kind of a front. We all kind of know that a little bit. Like, we suspect it, but it's very hard to keep it in mind. To keep in mind that the same people that are posting their pictures from a Caribbean vacation, boyfriend and girlfriend, are fighting all the time and can't stand each other and like are about to break up, and like there's all this, at some level we probably know that, but it's a lot of this data, I think for me, I've always suspected that, but it's been hard to really get it in my head until I started studying this data, where I started studying people's Google searches, and I started studying the data from porn sites, and I started studying the data from clicks, and then it's like you just start seeing things. You're like, oh wow, like things are very different from how people are presenting themselves. Now, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's horrible. I mean, I talk about racism in the book a lot, and sometimes it's like if someone was paranoid that people behind their backs, when they're smiling and doing all these nice things, are secretly like hating them because of their skin color. Fortunately, that does happen in large numbers.
Yeah, no, I mean, if I'm to synthesize what we had just talked about, the really good thing that can, the audience can take away is, let's say, whatever problem you come up with, let's say I'm not good enough, or I'm the only person in the world whose boss is super mean, or I think I'm not working hard enough, or I'm the only one addicted to porn, or I'm the one who's this or that. So instead of just, kind of running away with that insecurity and kind of like, I guess, getting super stressed about it, or not, I guess, doing the research about it, a person should first of all open their mind to that problem. In other words, okay, how big is this problem? What are other people doing about it? Or in other words, just get a lay of the land before they, let's say, try to scrutinize or try to take it too hard on themselves. And then secondly, once they have that, of course, don't discourage yourself to improve. It at least gives you some perspective as to how you should proceed. And maybe while you're doing that, you've realized that you can pick up the phone, and it's very likely that one of your friends is struggling with the same thing. And if you're just struggling or going through the same thing, and if you talk to them, maybe your first friend, second friend, or third friend can help you with it. So that's actually a very applicable framework that you can apply to any problem that you feel like is just going to make you pull your hair out.
Exactly. Yeah. 100%. I think. I think the tendency to beat oneself up. I have this phrase because the book is big data. The book is all about big data. Everybody lies. And I compare what people say on Facebook and what their Google search is, and they just don't line up at all. So I say that there's this line, don't compare your insides to other people's outsides. The 21st century equivalent is don't compare your Google searches to other people's Facebook posts.
Yeah.
So the things that you're doing, the insecurities, the porn, the health problems, whatever it is, when you're turning to Google, you're not seeing that on Facebook. Everyone else has the same stuff.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Nobody's going through life easy. Nobody's going through life and behind closed doors. When social media is down and when everybody is struggling with crap, and I think that does for me. It's been a life changer since I've done this research and written the book. I go through life totally different. I'm much easier on myself. It's not I'm not trying to improve, but it's not this beating myself up of how horrible I am, because I thought I was so much worse than everybody else. Now I realize we're all a fucking mess.
That is perfect way we could nail that topic of trying to understand how common insecurities are. And even when people ask me, I guess I'm at a much lower scale than you are, and I completely tell them upfront I have many more securities. All I have figured out to do is, while I have these insecurities, how do I still try to do work and don't beat myself up too much? So All the audiences that are listening, if you're taking notes or writing in your journal, try to tell yourself that whatever insecurities you have, you're not alone in the world. We humans have the tendency to think like we're the only person, we're outlier, we're social creatures. Yet we try to have our ego to pretend like we don't.
I've had people tell me, they say like, I want to be you, Seth. I'm like, because I write for the New York Times, I worked at Google.
You're a PhD from here and there,
And I tell them, if you saw my Google search, you saw what's in my head or my Google searches, you would not want to be me. It's anxiety, almost near constant anxiety, insecurity, just fear of everything, that I'm screwing up, like just all of this, everything. I got it all. I think, but I think everybody does. I think you look at some people, you see them, whether it's social media, you see celebrities, you see whoever, and you imagine their lives as so perfect. Their heads are working basically exactly the same as yours are. I know it because I've seen the data now. I've seen the search data, I've seen the porn data, I've seen it all, and there's nobody nobody's any different. We're all the same. We all think we're sounds uniquely horrible or something, but no, we're not.
Yeah. So now that we have ourselves and the audience is convinced about the fact that all of us are facing these insecurities, I wanted to kind of.
You have to buy and read the book Everybody Lies to really convince you.
Okay, perfect. We haven't convinced any of them yet. All of them will include. Of course, very certainly. But yes, all the work that Seth has done is tremendous, and anyone who wants to have deeper insights should definitely check out the book. We'll have it in the linked section down below. Now to kind of expand on the point you mentioned below, ever since you've written the book, you've looked at the life differently, or you've done things differently. Can you expand on that for the audience?
It's that, there are two things I do. One is I have more compassion to people because now I realize that everybody is suffering. And everybody has a lot of anxiety. So I don't go around a lot more easier on other people. Because, let's say, for example, I would hate my boss. I haven't actually hated my boss. I like my boss. But now, let's say I didn't like my coworker. Now I'm just always like, all right, they got their own issues. Let me try to see things from their perspectives. You don't know what they're going through. I think we usually forget. I think the tendency that I want people to fight is the tendency to think I have it really hard and everybody else has it really easy. Because both, it makes us a nasty, self-absorbed person because we think, why we need other people because we don't think, they have it so easy. Like, why are they don't need any more.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that we then beat ourselves up for messing up, and and then when you kind of just see everyone's kind of the same, then it makes it, I think, and the other thing is I don't take anybody too seriously. So, because I studied, for example, Pornhub data. Yeah. So, I used to have a great fear of public speaking. And, they have the phrase, how to cure public speaking.
Yeah.
Here, it's imagine the audience in their underwear. Look, imagine that they just made the Pornhub searches that I've been studying.
Interesting. Yeah.
No, I can't take them seriously. Like, they just, for golly, humping stuffed animal or just golly knows what, then it's like, well, why am I going to be intimidated by you? You're just a human being like an animal like anybody else. So there's a real way in which now I'm able to go through life. I used to be very intimidated by the world, to feel that everybody else had it figured out.
Yeah.
And that, that there was something wrong with me, that I didn't quite get what everyone else got. And now I realize, no, nobody has it figured out. Everyone's weird. Everyone's like an animal deep down. And it makes me a lot more, less insecure. I'm much more comfortable in my dealings in the world.
Yeah, your points of compassion and is, in other words, not getting too intimidated or taking others too seriously is gonna resonate quite a lot with the audiences. Because even myself in the beginning, I would say right now, being type A personalities, you're always being super critical with yourself, and you're saying, I'm the only one who's this, even if I've accomplished this. There's always someone on the top that, grass is greener on the other side philosophy. Let's say even if you're a millionaire, you're looking at billionaires. And now if you're a billionaire, you're looking at the billionaire club. It's like it's a never-ending self-criticism of what I don't have instead of course, what I have and what I don't have and what is the reality of other people not having it. So everyone who's listening should kind of take a note that compassion is critical at every stage, not to lose momentum, not to lose velocity. Seth himself is a very accomplished individual, but having compassion itself and not taking it too seriously at the cost of your health or even at the cost of your mental health will do you no good in the longer run, if not in the short term.
Right.
So for anyone out there who's listening and who knows they're criticizing themselves too much on personal and professional growth, please take a note and please continue to take whatever steps, whatever small they may be, to bring incremental small improvements in your life, because only then can you bring these changes into other people's lives. And I would highly encourage you, since this is a change in your mindset and change in how you view the world too, to a certain extent, that give Seth's book a read, or go back to it every now and then. I know I will, because it is just way too much, very personally speaking, to absorb and change my perspective on in a matter of weeks or months. I would definitely go back to your book every now and then to kind of so thank you so much, Seth, for doing that, and I'm sure my audiences will find it very helpful.
Thanks so much, Joanne.